2011 Honda Insight front brake pad replacement and machine rotors. I'm Brian Essick from How To Automotive, and I'm going to walk you through that process. So we're going to start by getting her up in the air and removing the front wheels. If you're doing this at home, use floor jacks and jack stands. Now that you got the wheels off, we're going to take the bottom 12mm bolt off the caliper, and you're going to have to back the nut up here. It's going to spin on you, so you're going to use a 19mm behind it and hold that, and then take the 12 out. After removing the bottom 12, what you can do is pull the caliper up now, swing it completely up, and wiggle it back and forth and push it inwards and pull it off. The pin will slide out of its guide here, and then you can set the caliper up here on the suspension for right now. Next, we need to remove the caliper bracket, and on the back side here there's going to be two 17mm bolts. Remove both of those, and then this caliper bracket will come off, and you're going to set that aside. Next, we need to determine if our rotor itself is thick enough to machine, so you're going to measure it in a couple spots, and as you can see we got 0.818. Now we're going to look it up in a book, or you can look it up in the computer. Sometimes there's the spec is stamped on the rotor, but a lot of times there's surface rust on them and you can't read them, especially depending on where you live. So there's a book, this is called the Bindex Brake Books. You can get these at your parts supplier. So I'm gonna look it up here. This is 2011, and it says here for the 2010 through 14 Insight, the discard at under is 0.748. So we have a little over 60 thousandths here to play with. So we got plenty to turn. If you guys don't have access to any of this, what you can do is take the rotor off and take it down to your local repair shop, and tell them what year, make, model it is, and they'll measure it for you, and they can look the spec up for you, and they can machine the rotor for you if you don't have access to a brake lathe or a way of turning the rotor. So now we need to get the rotor off, and we need to remove these Phillips screws here, and you're going to need an impact screwdriver. So you're going to need a tool like this, and you're going to hold it with one hand and strike it on the end here with a hammer, and inside this it has a mechanism that as you hit it with a hammer, it rotates the bit for you, and it'll back the bit off. And it's pretty much almost the only way to get rotors off the Hondas. And I break these bits all the time, so I have actually 4 or 5 of these in stock, and warranty them out. So now that the screws are out, most likely this rotor is still going to be stuck to the hub, especially if you live like on the East Coast where there's a lot of salt and stuff on the roads and stuff. They'll weld themselves or rust themselves on there. So what you can do is you can take a 8x125 bolt and thread it into the rotor like so, and then you can take a tool, your gun. You can even do this with a ratchet, just a regular hand ratchet, and you can run it in like that, and then it pops the rotor free from the hub. Now you can chuck your rotor up into your brake lathe and machine your rotor. While this is doing it, I'm going to show you how to prep the brake pads and the calipers and the caliper hardware. So while the rotor is machining, we can do all of our prep work. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the old pads and we're going to match them up with our new ones here, and see it. This is a little it's a squealer. So when you wear your brakes down to it touches this little metal tab, and it squeals and lets the driver know that it needs brakes. So you want to line that, match up the one that went with it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to transfer the old shims over. If you didn't come with, some pads come with new shims. If they did, just use the new shims. If they don't, transfer the new shims over, the old shims over. But before I put the shims on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little of this Seal Glide brake grease. It's specially designed for brakes, so it doesn't break down. Other brands are like Molly grease, stuff like that. And I'm going to take a thin layer and put it on the back of the pad, and then I'm going to transfer over my first shim, and I'm going to put a thin layer of the grease on the shim. Then I'll put the other shim on over the top, and I'll put a thin layer just where the piston rides, like so. And I'll do that same process for the outer. This is the inner pad, and I'll do the same process for the outer. Okay, now that the inner and outer pad is prepped for the side, I'm going to go ahead and take my brakes. Came with the new hardware kit. So if yours doesn't come with these, what I recommend you do is clean these out with a wire brush and inspect them to make sure they're in good shape. This is a real common area for causing the pads to stick, is gunk built up on it, or corrosion or whatever, and it built up on the slides here, and the brake pads won't slide back and forth. But if yours comes with new hardware, definitely transfer it over. So just take one off, match it up, put it on. Same thing with the top. Now the hardware is transferred over. Now what you can do is you can take the bottom pin here and you can slide it out of its boot and inspect it, and if it needs lubricating, lubricate it. So you can just put a little dollop of that same grease that you put on the back of the pads there. Just put a little dollop on there, and you can put it back in its boot, and you want to work it back and forth and make sure that it moves freely. Now that that's done, we're going to remount our rotor. So we're just going to slip it on and line up the holes where the screws went in, and re-screw the Phillips screws back in it. So after mounting the rotor, now we need to remount the caliper bracket. But before we mount this back up, we want to take the bolts that came off of it, and we want to put a little small dollop of blue Loctite thread sealer on the threads. And the reason why is these bolts don't have lock washers on them of any sort. And so what this does is it's glue. It's like kind of like a glue that you put in the threads, and it prevents it from vibrating loose and backing out. And so now, after that, you can remount this over the rotor, start your bolts, and tighten those down. Now that the brackets remounted and bolted back up and torqued down, we can put the new brake pads in. So the brake pad with the clip on it is the inside one. You can see by the piston ring where it left on this whole shim. So go ahead and put those, slide those on into the little groove. Getting the brake pads mounted, you press the piston back into the bore of the caliper. And before we do that, what you want to do is you want to look at your master cylinder, and as you can see, the brake fluid level is actually low on this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press this piston back in, but I'm not going to open the bleeder screw. So what that does is it pushes the brake fluid back through the brake line and back up into the master cylinder. So you want to watch this. So I'm going to do one side at a time. I'm going to push that piston in, and if somebody has topped this off anytime in its life, what happens is if you push that fluid in and it comes up, if it's too full, it'll spill out. So you may have to suck a little fluid out of the master cylinder. So I'll push one piston in, and then I'll check up here and make sure that the fluid doesn't overflow. So to push this piston in, all I used was a C-clamp like this. You can use large channel locks, and they also have tools that kind of look like caulking guns that can push the pistons back in. And also when you do this, you can feel it. If it's hard to get the piston back in, they should turn in pretty easily and the piston should slide back up in the caliper pretty easily. So if it doesn't do that, then you may have a problem. Then you may have to open the bleeder screw. So once you get the caliper pressed back in, now you can take a little grease and put it back on this top pin here, just a little small amount. And now the caliper is ready to go back onto the over the pads. To do that, what you do is you take the caliper like so, and make sure that the brake hose is not twisted. So you're going to stab it in the boot like that, and then pull it towards you until it fully seats like that. Then you're going to rotate the caliper down, and on the inside you're going to have to push the pin in like that. Now you're going to put a little of the blue Loctite on the bolt. Line up your bolt hole, start your bolt, and tighten it down. You're probably going to have to hold the inside here with the 19mm wrench while you tighten the 12. Okay, now that everything's on and tightened up, you're pretty much going to duplicate the same process for the opposite side. And after you get that all done, you're going to put your wheels on and torque the wheels. And then the most important step next is you're going to get in the car and you're going to pump the brake pedal like 7-8 times. Pump it until you have a firm, nice firm pedal. The first couple times you pump it, it's probably going to go to the floor a couple times, and then after you pump the fluid back into the calipers, the pedal return back to normal. Now if you pump it more than 7-8 times and it doesn't return to normal, you probably either have somehow gotten air in the system and you'll need to bleed the brakes. And that's how you perform a brake job on a 2011 Honda Insight. I'm Brian Essick from How To Automotive, and I'd like to thank you for watching my videos, and as always, it's my pleasure sharing my experience with you, and encourage you to subscribe for more valuable videos like this. Thank you again.